Welcome to Beyond the Wall. This is a story about before, during, and after my incarceration. As you know, I've spent over 2 decades in the penitentiary, and now I'm reinserting myself back into society. But to understand how I end up here today, I'd have to take you through the course of my life. Right now, I'm going through to a couple of therapy sessions that was court ordered. I take a class called MR2. I mean, not MR2, as a Toyota. MRT. And then I have a one-on-one counseling with a therapist. I just had my session with her this Saturday for an hour. I go to her class bi-weekly, Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock. And she mentioned on this last session I had that I've been progressing. Now, I'm not sure if I agree with her because I'm not sure how this is supposed to work. But I know the first couple of sessions I had with her, I was kind of bucking the system because it was just like, one, I don't feel like I need therapy. Two, I don't want to be there. But, for all those that feel there's a stigma about going to therapy and stuff, I understand your apprehension, your concerns, because I'm going through it right now. But, if you have somebody, a therapist that is really listening to you, that is really trying to help you, I think you might have a better experience with it. And through the course of me having conversations with her, I guess now I'm starting to build, I don't know if I trust her or anything like that, but, they're professionals and they've studied, the effects that trauma and other things in your life that's caused you to develop a certain way of thinking that causes you to justify certain actions, and you yourself trying to evaluate yourself might not be able to recognize these different traumas or these different incidents that played a role in how you become who you are today. I've always been just the person that whatever happens in my life happens. And I deal with it however I felt like I dealt with it. And I didn't think that it was any of those things that happened coming from Cambodia, being in a refugee camp, coming to America, being in a country where you don't know the language, don't know the culture. I never thought that those things affected me and affected my behavior and caused me to be able to justify certain things or be okay with certain things. And again, I'm not sure how all this is gonna go, but I gotta be in those sessions anyway. So where I am in a stage in my life, if I gotta be there for this hour period, I might as well try to find out, see if this really helps you. If this really helps you change the way you think, the way you feel about certain issues. My life from the time I was born has been chaotic. The things that I share with you now are not from my own memory because, like I've told you, the earliest memory I have is of the day that I was trying to go visit my mom in the hospital and I got my foot stuck in the back of the wheel of the bicycle and I never got a chance to see my mom. I'm 45 years old now and maybe I'm able to handle this conversation or the topic a little more than when I was younger. But for all those that's ever lost a loved one, you already know that those emotions and those feelings never fade, not even through time. I was born in a refugee camp. For lack of a better term, it was a slave camp. Our whole country was evacuated out of the city and put out in the country field to grow rice. So many deaths. A third of our population. We had 6 million Cambodians at the time, and a third of them died. They died through execution. They died through starvation, disease. So at the time I was born, there wasn't much food. There wasn't much nutrients. And my mom and my dad tell me that they still to this day don't understand how I was able to survive, because I was always sick. I was always knocking on death's door. But somehow, some way, through the grace of God and their love, I've always pulled through. From the time I was born, around maybe at the age of 3 or 4, we escaped to Thailand. But when we first went into Thailand, the government in Thailand didn't want us in because they were afraid that the Khmer Rouge was going to chase us across their border. So they sent us back. But on the second time, we were accepted. And I think the Americans established a refugee camp there. From the refugee camp in Thailand, we went to the one in the Philippines. And through the course of my first 6 years, somehow, some way, I've always flirted with death. When I was 4 years old in Thailand, now this story, I only remember waking up. I remember somehow that I drowned, but I didn't understand or remember how it actually happened. But me and my wife, while I was incarcerated, my wife moved out here to Utah. She's originally from New Mexico. Her family lives in Denver, but because she wanted me to have a stable home and be around my family when I got released, she moved out here and became a part of my family. And through her, I was able to interact with my parents, my siblings, and my nieces and nephew. Because when I was locked up, I left the world behind. It's not like that I didn't want to talk to my parents or my brothers and sisters. It's more because like if I call home and something's going on, if they're sick or if they're having financial problems or whatever other issues arise, I'm useless. I can't do a freaking thing for my family. And I took the actions that I did on my own. And I did what I did, and I understand that I had to pay the consequences and pay my debt to the community. But I didn't want to be burdened. I didn't want to be a burden upon my family out here. So I would only call home and talk to my mom maybe once or twice a month. But growing up here in America, being here after we escaped our country, our family, we never really had conversations about that time period, being in a refugee camp and coming here, because it's hard to keep a dry eye when you're discussing these topics, because these topics are full of horrors, tragedy, and losses. But my wife asked my mom one time about one of the times that I drowned. And my mom told her that some kid, a friend of mine, I forget his name, we were only 4 years old, came running to her house, to the shack that we were in the village, in that refugee camp, and was banging on the door saying, "Hey, Macy just jumped in the canal." So I guess what had happened, we were sitting on top of like a bridge, and there's a canal that runs through it. And it was raining and the canal filled up. And I saw a floating calf, a cow flowing down the canal. I'm probably sure the calf was dead, but it was floating. So I told my friend, I said, hey, I think if we jump in, we can float too. And of course he looked at me like, I don't think that's a good idea. But me being me, I guess, with not a lot of sense, I thought I could jump. I don't know how to swim. I know how to swim a little bit now, but I jumped in the canal. And my friend ran to my house, banged on the door and got my mom. My mom went and got all the other adults in the village. And they ran out. It's raining, you know. And they followed the canal down and they fished me out of the stream. You know, another time, you know, when I was brought home, my dad asked me if I remember anything, and I told him the only thing I remember was I was singing and dancing with the fishes. Another time in the Philippines, I went cliff jumping. You know, I seen the older guys jumping off the cliffs, and so I wanted to do it too. And I was probably around 6 at this time, and I jumped off the cliff. When I landed in the water, there was another person waiting to jump. They jumped off the cliff, and they landed on top of me and knocked me unconscious. And just recently, last year, when I just started emailing my father and started really opening a line of communication to him, because I really wanted to start understanding my family's life history. And I know these are painful subjects, but I feel that I have to start somewhere to give my nieces and nephew a sense of who we are, where we came from, and our culture. And he told me that particular incident was when he really thought he was going to lose me, because I was knocked unconscious under the water, and they had to go swim and look for me and fish me out. But, you know, all these things happened to me, but yet I survived. And as you know, when I came here, I joined a gang, got caught up, got sentenced to 26 years in prison in one of the most violent environment throughout the United States. I've been stabbed. I was stabbed over a spine, hit in the back of my spine in a riot, and I was in my cell. You know, we're not the type of person, like Bryson and I was in a riot, and he had got stabbed up about 10 or 12 times, and we're sitting in the cell patching each other up. You know, I'm sticking freaking toilet paper roll, you know, the toilet paper, rolling him up like a Q-tip and put him in his body to block the puncture, and taking the mailing label that we used to put on our envelope to mail letters home, taping over it. But I'm not the type of person to tell the staff, hey, I got stabbed, I need medical attention. So we just bandage each other up in a cell as best we could. Well, I thought I got out without too much damage. You know, I got a cut across my face, and I got a couple stab wounds in my side, you know, because during the course of the riot, I kept the 4 or 5 individuals that I was fighting in front of me. But one of them got behind me and started stabbing me in the back and hit me in my spine. Like, thinking about it, you know, and, you know, when you're in the moment of the confrontation, you're not really worried about you can get hurt if you live or die. You're just in that moment. But when I think about it, I know that I'm very fortunate that it wasn't a quarter inch one way or a quarter inch another, I could have been paralyzed. But when he, patched me up, the next morning when I woke up, my sheet was soaked with blood. And for the next 2 weeks, I was coughing up blood in my cell for the next 2 weeks. I had told the nurse that came by to say, hey, I think I got the flu, because I just had a vicious cough. And she's like, oh yeah, we'll come back and see you. Well, we were locked down for 2 months. I never saw that nurse again. But through the grace of God and whatever force that's been watching over me, I healed up, I survived, and I'm here now. A lot of you out there have your own trauma, have your own tragic stories, which is so unfortunate that, my experience is not a unique experience. Like right now, we have refugees that are escaping from Ukraine. And look at all the death tolls that has been incurring in that time. Well, we have the ones coming out of Syria, Somalia, Iraq, all around the world. We keep suffering and going through this vicious cycle. They're being, especially the foreigners that don't speak English in their language, they're being brought here to America, brand new culture, don't know the language. Those things play a psychological effect on you and really plays a big role on how you act, how you behave, and how you think. Some of us are able to deal with the situation better than others. But us sitting here trying to evaluate ourselves, one, we don't know how. We're not trained to. So like any stigma that people have about therapies, sessions, and whatnot, I can only speak from my experience. And these last few times I've been to class, to my sessions, I'm finding that is helpful. I don't know if they're going to be able to fix any problems that I have going on in my head. But now I'm at the point where I feel a little bit more comfortable addressing the issue. Because I never thought I suffered any type of drama or trauma. Because for me, it was just things that happen in your life. But if you look at my life to this point in totality, I've really lived my whole entire life in a chaotic, hostile, violent environment. And there's no way that you can live in a life like that and not be affected. A therapist is just a friend that you can confide in, but they're under certain structures, certain rules to not, run their mouth to their next buddy, to keep it confidential. So it's a safe environment for you to express yourself and deal with your issue. And I would encourage anybody out there now that are dealing with situation is to find a professional and sit down and talk to them. I don't know if they're going to be able to fix you or help you or anything of that nature, but I know just like being able to vocalize it, being able to say it out loud, being able to talk to it and process it, it's got to help. I mean, part of these episodes that I do is therapeutic to me. Instead of coming out here holding all my emotions inside and trying to deal with my, whatever I got going on in my head on my own, I'm here speaking to you, sharing it with the world. And in that aspect, it's really helping me find a valve to release some of that tension. you know, they always say, man, don't hold it inside, talk about it. And even though this is not a therapy session that I'm having with you, the viewers, but in a sense, it is for me. It's helping me able to process these emotions and these feelings that I'm dealing with. And I'm so grateful that you're viewing this. I'm so grateful for your comments and all the kind words and all the love and support. You know, I want to be here and help show you my progression. And I don't know what's going to happen a month from now or a year from now, but I'm determined to put my best feet forward. And it's inspiring and encouraging that I have such kind people out there that are expressing such kind words. You know, this is Welcome to Beyond the Wall. If you guys enjoy these episodes, please subscribe, like and share, click on the bell so that when I have a new video come out, you'll be notified. And thanks again for tuning in. Much love to everyone.